Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about 5 super beneficial fish that you can get for your aquarium. So obviously all 5 of these aquarium fish are going to benefit your aquarium differently. Some are great for keeping the algae down in your aquarium, others are great for eating leftovers, and then there's others that are great for turning over substrate and making sure it's aerated. So yeah, all 5 of these fish are definitely beneficial and they're definitely great to throw into a community aquarium just to help cut down on your tank maintenance a little bit. But I guess with that being said, without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video with the first fish on our list. So this is actually a little bit ironic because the first fish on our list today isn't actually a fish, but we have cherry shrimp. So cherry shrimp are a great little beneficial thing to add into your aquarium. They're great for a number of reasons. So number one, these guys are a great addition into like your cleanup crew. So they're super great at eating any of the leftover fish food that your other fish in your aquarium don't actually eat, and because of that they're super beneficial when it comes to making sure you have a stable nitrogen cycle and making sure you don't have any ammonia spikes in your aquarium. As well as that, these guys are also super great at taking care of any biofilm that's growing in your aquarium. So a lot of the time biofilm isn't going to really be too visible, if I'm being honest, particularly if you have cherry shrimp in there, just because they're going to absolutely destroy it every time it grows. But sometimes biofilm can grow over surfaces in your aquarium and it can sort of look like a little gelatinous sort of layer, and these guys will quite easily eat all that. It's actually a super beneficial little addition into their diet, and yeah, they'll absolutely demolish any of that as soon as it starts to appear in your aquarium. Another thing these guys will do is they'll actually eat small amounts of algae. So they're probably not one of the best algae eaters you can use, but they definitely do eat a little bit of algae. So as you can see, this is my cherry shrimp tank back here, and it's got a massive ball of algae actually. So they don't really eat things like hair algae, but they will eat surface algae and things like that that grow on the glass or on other surfaces in your aquarium. So they can be super beneficial as a little algae eater in a nano aquarium. And another thing these guys are great at is actually detritus management. So when you get all that detritus building up around the bottom of your aquarium, and if you don't know what detritus is, it's basically like that disgusting little brown stuff that builds up. It's not actually too harmful for your aquarium, but if it builds up over a long period of time, it can cause ammonia spikes and imbalances in your nitrogen cycle. So what the cherry shrimp will do is, because they're sort of a bottom dwelling fish, when they're scurrying around the bottom of your aquarium, they'll actually kick some of that detritus up and into the water column, and that can make it 10 times easier for your filter to actually suck that up and take care of it. And the final reason these guys are super beneficial for your aquarium is if anything dies in your aquarium, say like any fish, or even when aquarium plants die and their leaves fall off, the cherry shrimp will actually eat those up. So that's actually super beneficial, just because dead fish can cause absolutely massive ammonia spikes, particularly if they're a relatively large fish in comparison to the tank size. So the cherry shrimp will just take care of those really quickly, and it'll mean there's less risk of having ammonia spikes in your aquarium. And they'll also take care of any of that decaying plant matter as well, which means there's less chance of that breaking down and turning into detritus. So as well as them being super beneficial for your aquarium, they're so easy to care for. And as for the water parameters you're going to want to keep these guys in, generally speaking, you're going to want a temperature of about 22 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is about 72 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to want a pH anywhere between 6.5 to 7.5. So these guys are super hardy, and obviously they can go in a range of water parameters. The only thing I would recommend is trying to keep them in stable water parameters. So they don't really care what the water parameters are, but keeping those parameters stable so they're not constantly fluctuating is definitely super important for these guys. As well as that, I'd highly recommend you keep these guys with plenty of plants in the aquarium, particularly if you have other fish in there, and these plants will give the cherry shrimp somewhere to hide. It makes them feel a lot safer in general, just because they know they have somewhere where they can go and seek refuge if they do feel threatened. And it also gives them a place to spawn and release their little shrimplets, and those guys will be able to grow up by themselves in the nice luscious plants you've provided them with. But yeah, with that being said, cherry shrimp are definitely a great super beneficial little aquarium fish. Moving on to the next species of fish on our list, we actually have a catfish. We have bristlenose. So bristlenose are a super common little beginner fish, and a lot of the time they are sold as cleaner fish just because they do a outstanding job at it. So these guys particularly attack any of that surface algae that grows on the glass in your aquarium. So that's things like green spot algae, green film algae, any of that algae that grows on your glass. As well as that, they'll actually eat any of the biofilm as well, so super similar to the cherry shrimp. As soon as any of that starts growing in your aquarium, these guys will demolish that. And they'll also go ahead and eat any of that leftover food that your other fish don't eat. So they're super great at keeping your tank clean and making sure there's no ammonia spikes. On top of that, these guys are super peaceful, so they can go with pretty much any sort of freshwater aquarium fish. They can go with things like cherry shrimp all the way up to African cichlids. And obviously, like I said, they are a beginner fish, so they're super easy to care for. And as for the water parameters you're going to want to keep these guys in, you're going to want, again, a temperature of about 22 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is about 72 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're going to want a pH anywhere between 6.5 to 7.5. The only other thing I'd recommend with these guys is making sure you're feeding them like their own diet. So it can be a little bit confusing sometimes, but these guys do need their own specific diet that's separate to most other tropical aquarium fish. So a lot of your other tropical aquarium fish will eat things like tropical flakes or tropical pellets, whereas the bristlenose actually do need things like algae wafers. You can also throw in zucchini, green beans, any of those green vegetables, and you can also get other sort of specialized pleco pellets. So yeah, that is definitely something you need to keep in mind if you are planning on getting these guys. But with that being said, they definitely are super beneficial and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next species of fish on our list, we actually have another catfish. We have Corydora catfish. So one of my favorite things about cories is they come in a variety of sizes. You can get ones for nano aquariums, so things like Hasbrosis and pygmy cories, and then you can get pretty much any other sort of cory for a larger sized aquarium. So what makes these guys beneficial for your aquarium is they're actually one of the best scavengers. So they'll go around and eat any of that leftover food that your other fish don't eat. They're also super great at detritus management as well. So because they're constantly scurrying around the bottom of your aquarium, they're kicking up any of that detritus that builds up. And they can also be super beneficial because they actually do aerate and turn over the substrate. And what this does is it actually prevents any toxic gas bubbles building up, particularly if you have a super dense substrate like sand. Along with that, they're super peaceful, so they can go with pretty much any sort of tropical aquarium fish, from things like rasboras all the way up to angelfish. You probably don't want to be keeping these guys with things like cherry shrimp just because they can be a little bit predatory. Although if you're keeping the pygmy varieties or like Hasbrosis and things like that, they might be able to get away with living with adult sized cherry shrimp. As well as being super peaceful, they're extremely easy to care for. And as for the water parameters you're going to want to keep these guys in, you're going to once again want a temperature of about 22 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is about 72 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And you're going to want a pH anywhere between 6 to 7.5. So the only other things I'd recommend with these guys is, number one, making sure you're feeding these guys their own diet as well. So very similar to the bristlenose, they can be forgotten a little bit and just thrown into your aquarium, but they do definitely need their own specialized cory pellets. You can also throw in frozen foods for them, and obviously they'll eat any of that leftover food that your other fish don't eat. And then the other thing I'd recommend is trying to keep these guys on a soft substrate, and the reason for that is because sometimes on a more coarse or very heavy substrate, they can actually damage their barbels, and that can lead to all sorts of infections. They can swell up and they can actually stop your cories from being able to eat. So that is pretty rare to happen, but personally I just like to completely get rid of the chance of that even happening. So I definitely recommend keeping these guys on either bare bottom or on sand. But yeah, with that being said, Corydora catfish are another super great little beneficial aquarium fish. Moving on to the next species of fish on our list, we have a super oddball fish. We have coolie loaches. So these guys are a super freaky little snake looking thing. They sort of just wiggle around the bottom of your aquarium. And what makes them super beneficial is they're practically like a just really freaky looking Corydoras. So they'll eat any sort of leftover food that your other fish don't eat, and they'll also turn over the substrate, which can release those toxic gas bubbles. And in doing that, they're also kicking up the detritus into the water column for your filter to suck up. So along with them being beneficial for those reasons, they're also very peaceful, and they can go with a variety of tropical aquarium fish. So things like tetras, rasboras, barbs, angelfish, dwarf cichlids, any of those sort of tropical aquarium fish should go completely fine with these guys, as long as they're not things like cherry shrimp, which these guys may actually eat, particularly if they're small cherry shrimp, but pretty much anything else should go with them perfectly fine. As for water parameters for these guys, you're going to want a temperature of about 24 to 30 degrees Celsius, which is about 75 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to want a pH of about 6 to 7.5. So the only downside to these guys, in my opinion, is sometimes they can just be super shy and never really come out in your aquarium. So this mainly is because these guys are pretty much a nocturnal fish, and in my experience, they'll only really come out during like nighttime or after your lights have turned off. But yeah, that's just in my experience one of the only downsides to these guys. But yeah, coolie loaches are another great, super beneficial little addition into your aquarium. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a super small little catfish. We have Sinkless catfish. So the reason I put Sinkless catfish on this list today is they're practically the exact same as bristlenose, except they're more suited for like a nano sort of aquarium. So if you have a smaller sized aquarium, then these guys are the perfect little beneficial fish for you. So once again, these guys are a sucking mouth catfish, so they'll attack any of that biofilm or algae that grows on surfaces in your aquarium. I'm not sure if these guys will really go after any leftover food. I haven't really kept them too much, to be honest, although I'm assuming they probably would go after any leftover food that your other fish don't eat. So one of the great things about these guys, like I mentioned, is they're a super small fish, so they can actually go in very small tanks. As well as that, they can go with other super small fish as well, so things like small tetras, small rasboras, cherry shrimp, any of those nano sort of aquarium fish make perfect tank mates for them. They are also relatively easy to care for, so as for water parameters for these guys, you're going to want a temperature of about 22 to 28 degrees Celsius, which is about 72 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to want a pH of about 6 to 7.5. Something I would recommend with these guys is making sure you have plenty of plants in your aquarium. So out in the wild, because these guys are relatively small, they are preyed upon quite a lot by larger fish and all sorts of other animals. So the plants just give them somewhere to hide and make them feel a lot safer in your aquarium. And if they feel safer, they'll be more inclined to eat algae, come out, eat leftover food, do things like that. So yeah, it's definitely beneficial to throw a few plants in your aquarium for these guys. But with that said, these guys are another super great little beneficial aquarium fish. So that is actually going to bring us to the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope this video helps a few of you guys out. As you may actually be able to tell, I've been a little bit sick lately, so I'm sorry if I sound a little bit weird in my latest videos. But yeah, if you did enjoy today's video, please make sure to go down and subscribe, and while you're down there, smash the like button and comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going down there and reading them all, and I try to reply back to as many comments as I can. Also, if you haven't done so already, go check out my website, aussiefishkeeping.com. I've got all sorts of fish, botanicals, and other aquarium products up there. But yeah, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all so much for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you all in that next video.